Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Vallen, and this is Blood Magic. Today we're going to be covering alchemy arrays. Not a lot of people realize that alchemy arrays in Blood Magic are actually rather early game stuff. And I'm going to show you how they can be rather useful in setting up your early game. To start off with, you'll have your traditional start with Blood Magic, and that is in crafting a rudimentary snare. You can make 4 at a time, and you can also, make sure that you've got several of them. Now, I of course, have a volunteer over here that is going to be helping us out. All you need to do is just shoot these guys with your snares until you finally see some white particles. Then you can shoot them, slash them, kill them in any way you want, until finally they drop a demonic will. Pick these items up, and provided you have at least one or more in there, you should be good to go. You then will need to have a Hellfire Forge. Relatively early game as well. And with this demonic will, you can then take your Hellfire Forge that you've made, put it in on the side here. It will craft up on the side with your other ingredients. Redstone, gunpowder, coal, and bone meal will make you the desired component for the base of this bit by bit. That, my friends, is arcane ashes. These are used to draw alchemy circles, and each one will give you about 20 uses. Currently, I am in creative mode, and anytime that I put one of these down on the ground, I will not be using any up, just so that you are aware. And this is a blank alchemy array. You need to add ingredients further to make this actually work for you. And this is what I'm going to show you. As it is, just by right-clicking on a ground or even on the side of a block, it will place something horizontal. So even if you're, out here, it will still float in the air. And it is a solid item. If I walk into it, I cannot pass through it, even though I can see through it. But if I jump on it, it also acts like a step as well. Something that you should be very aware of, because it can be misleading to think that it is actually a transparent block that you can walk through. Now let's get on with making some of these really cool things. We're going to start with the movement array. Movement array is very simply made, as most of these are. As I said, they are relatively early game. You just place down a simple alchemy array, and then you add in things like a feather, and then a piece of redstone in that order. If you put them in the wrong order, you will not get the right item. You place this, and then you'll see the rune itself lift up off the ground and go in a direction. Keep in mind that it is an arrow, and it will force entities to go in that direction. So if I throw a feather at this, pew, it shot it off in that direction. If I walk into it, zoom, it will shoot me over that way. And it will further launch items if they are airbound. So if I jump on it, I get launched much further than if I were to just walk into it. And it is a small step up, so therefore you might have some difficulty in entering it if there is a block a couple blocks above it. Something you should be aware of with arcane ashes when you place them on the ground. If I put something in incorrect order, for instance, let's put redstone and then the feather. Well, it used up the feather, but there's nothing there. You'll have to then break it, and you should get the ingredients back from it. So it is beneficial in that aspect. Now, this movement array is actually very beneficial for getting around very long corridors. For instance, I have this one set up here so that if I walk into this, it will simply just launch me along very rapidly all the way to the end. And because the first one launches me into the air a little bit, it will then propel me further with the next one that I hit. And now for the next one, the Updraft Array. It's very similar to the movement, but it's in a much more, vertical manner instead of horizontal. As before, you will need to place down your arcane ashes, a feather, but instead this time you're going to want to put down a piece of glowstone. It will then hover into the air, and you'll see that the arrow will start pointing up eventually, as so. Now, keep in mind that this gives you the direction that is going to propel things. Same with the movement array. The arrow tells you the direction that you are going to be propelled. So even if I were to come at it from this angle, I would be launched backwards. If I head towards this, I will get launched up into the air, and I can keep bouncing on it. But if I'm not in creative, well, bad things can happen. I'm now in standard survival mode. If I jump on this, it will launch me about 10 blocks into the air. I just launched into a second one. If you look here, I had another one just close by. I walked a little bit further to it. But not to worry, I can always just run and jump down and land on a different rune that I will show you in a moment. But the idea here is you will take some damage if you kind of miss the fall, and it will launch you up about 10 blocks at a time. So you can use this as a very fast means of getting up to multiple levels in your base, or just as an escape route. Now this next one I'm going to show you is called the Skeleton Turret Array. Of course, it's a little bit more like you get to make your own skeleton minion, which is pretty darn cool, actually. Now, I've name tagged these guys so that they don't despawn, but the idea is, as before, you place down your arcane ashes, you then do an arrow first and then a feather, and it will create this little hovering disc. If a skeleton should wander into this, you might need to lure them in place, or you might have access to a skeleton spawner. They will then consider you friendly. As you can see here, I'm not being attacked by either of these mobs. They are currently just kind of staring at me, and I'm perfectly safe. So, therefore, they will also attack hostile mobs, provided that they're within their aggro range. I just turned on a spawner, and we now have a zombie. And of course, they start shooting the zombie, etc. So you can place these guys, hopefully, in a place of safety, so that they aren't just going to get destroyed. And you might also want to make sure that they have further protection from things like creepers, because they will actually attack them as well. So you might want to put them in an elevated position. Now this next one I already did show off, and that is the Bouncing Array. It's a little bit more unique than the others. It has less of a benefit, but also can be life-saving. You place down your alchemical array as before, slime ball followed by a redstone piece. It will then start floating as before, similar to the skeletal ones, and it will then create kind of a slime block. You can see here, when I jump on it, I kind of have this little bouncing effect. If I'm much higher in the air, I'll just launch myself from a very high distance here, very far up, and I will launch myself down, and I'm perfectly fine. Not to worry, it will then cushion your fall, and also has potential to bounce, or allow you to bounce at the very least. Holding shift while bouncing will prevent you from bouncing any further, but you might take damage. And here we have the Fast Mining Array. This one here is a little bit more complex and will require a little bit more preparation. A mining reagent is involved, which of course requires a Hellfire Forge with a Tartaric gem, plus a few more tools in order to start that, plus an iron pickaxe. You add this in, then the iron pickaxe, and you'll take a little bit of damage, but you'll also start getting some kind of potion effect. You have haste 3. For 30 seconds, and I took like maybe a half a heart of damage. It wasn't too bad, and it's a range or radius of around 10 blocks, give or take, in a sphere as far as I can tell. Well, actually it's more of a square, but it will go above and below, and therefore you can take advantage of this. Now if I have my sword here, you can see I'm kind of going a little bit crazy with mining because I can do this, and every 30 seconds I will take a little bit of damage. It is absorbing blood from me to run this spell. It is not using anything from a blood network. I haven't even set one up yet. So it is something that can be useful for putting it around your base. It will give a haste effect to everything in the area though. So therefore, if you have other players nearby, they will gain it. And it also works for combat. So your regen of the weapon will go quite quickly. And let's go on to this last one here, the Attractor Array. The Attractor Array is very unique and very overlooked in its early game, very early game. In fact, you only need a couple pieces of rotten flesh in order to make it. As before, arcane ashes, you then put down 2 pieces of rotten flesh, and it will create an attractor of sorts. And basically it will draw any mobs that are nearby to it. It will not necessarily keep them there. For instance, if I spawn a zombie, he's going to wander over to it, and then he got attacked, and therefore his attention got pulled away. Now, this can be much more beneficial than in this case. You saw that I actually used the haste from that to mine that up very quickly, and that is through some kind of mob spawner. Now I currently have this set up underneath a hopper, and above that is just this little walled area for my skelly buddies to start picking at this guy. Now allow me to change my game mode so that I can fly up in here and you can see what I have going on. Currently a zombie spawner above a hole. And normally the zombies would land down here inside and would just kind of wander around, never to escape. Maybe one or two might fall out eventually, but what this Attractor Array does is it will pull them towards the center. Now, in this case, I had to actually kind of lower it down any higher than this, and it was not actually going to make it. Let me turn the lights off in there, and it should start eventually spawning zombies, which will instantly fall down. Now, I'm going to go back into this mode so that I can be inside and I can show you guys that the zombie isn't just spawning into the hole, he's actually spawning nearby and will then walk right down into the hole and get attacked by my skelly buddies. Now if I drop back down and I change my game mode back to 1, you can see that I have actually been killing zombies for quite some time now. Of course, it's just going to be whatever the mobs will do. So if I had some kind of, creeper spawner in here, I'd be getting musical discs instead because the skeleton's shooting them. But it's just an idea that you could use this in order to power your own blood wells of as you desire, so that you can have all the zombies and such come down into the hole voluntarily rather than you having to use some kind of pushing or pulling mechanism, though you could always use these handy arrays just about everywhere you want. Just remember, if you want to use the movement ones, jumping will produce a better result if you are using the movement. If you're using the ones that fly up, they're going to be the same. So I hope you guys enjoyed this bit by bit on a little bit of overlooked blood magic, in my opinion, and that is the alchemy magic, or the arrays magic. It is really cool and early game stuff that can add a lot of fun, especially on the early game when you're just kind of grinding for lifeblood points. But that's about it. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and as always, spread the mischief to others. I think they'll enjoy this content too. Until next time, folks, I'll see ya.